Hello and welcome to Coffee and Discipleship Season 2, Episode 8. I am Robert Lyons, your host. I am grateful that all of you are on this journey with us. Keep those testimonies coming. Keep all of the information, the liking, the subscribing, and the sharing going. If you are not subscribed to this channel, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, hit that bell notification icon so that you can be informed when new episodes come out. We want to make sure that you are rolling with us as we work to increase our subscriber count to get this information to as many people as possible. We are absolutely grateful for all of the work that you are doing, both myself and the team. We really appreciate you. Today in the cup, another Deeper Roots coffee. Y'all know I love Deeper Roots. Shantaween. Now, I am probably butchering the pronunciation. Was just having a conversation with my favorite barista, Shane, and he was pronouncing it a completely different way. So I will make sure that we have links in the description. Would love for you guys to try it. And if you have coffees that you enjoy, that you love, go ahead, put them in the comments below. I would love to try those. Now, we've been on this journey with Moses. And if you want to study along with us, I encourage you to begin in Exodus chapter 1 and just kind of walk through with Moses and how he handled the work that was before him. This entire season, we've been working with self-defeating mindsets. And we are utilizing Moses as our case study. Now, there are several that we could utilize, and I'll be touching on some of those today and as we move forward in the coming episodes. But Moses shows us this kind of prolonged pushback where we began to see what's going on in his mind as he's communicating back with God. Now, that's an important thing that I want to say. Let's think about this for a moment. Moses, if we started Exodus 3, and if you haven't been with us, go back 2 episodes. I think we started this in episode 6. And so listen to episode 6, listen to episode 7. But Moses literally is pasturing the sheep and comes across the burning bush, just to bring us back up to speed, comes across the burning bush. The bush is burning but not being consumed. A voice cries out, take off your shoes. The place where you're standing is holy. Moses knows that something supernatural is happening in this moment. He comes to understand that he is communicating with God. And God is asking Moses to go and do a task. And I want you to listen to this simple statement. Moses is pushing back against God himself. Let that sink in for a moment. Moses is pushing back against the assignment of God, literally from the lips of God. Let's think about this. He's in the midst of a once-in-a-lifetime event. God is speaking, and he is still pushing back. As I was preparing notes and thinking over what I wanted to say today, it is easy for us on the other side of this particular story to really look down our nose at Moses and say, I can't believe that he would push back in the midst of such a glorious event. And then almost with a degree of arrogance, if you will, we began to inwardly and some of us outwardly began to say things like, if it were me, I would have ran to Egypt. If I'm in this place, if I'm in this predicament and God is speaking out of this burning bush, I would have ran to Egypt. I would have, charged the fire with a water pistol. If it were me, I would have jumped at the opportunity to work for the Lord. That's the way that we often approach this text and many others like it. If it were me, I would have immediately trusted God. But day by day, it is us. And how we respond to the voice of God, how we respond to the assignment of God, how we respond to the things of God, tell the truth that what's within us is often louder than God's request. I'll say that again. What's within us is often louder than God's request. Are we really sure that we would be any different than Moses? How do we respond? Here's a question for you. How do we respond when God speaks to us now? I want you to, if you take notes while you're listening to me, write that down maybe as a journal prompt for those of you who keep a journal. If you don't keep a journal, let me just sidestep here. If you don't keep a journal, it's a good practice to get those thoughts out of you. Otherwise, your mind can get stuck in a loop of trying to hold on to information. But just, for this week, maybe as a journal prompt, maybe as something to think about, ask yourself this question. How do I respond when God makes a request of me? How do I respond when God makes a request of me? Now, let me push into that a little bit further. Do I require a burning bush moment in order to say yes to God? Do I need God literally to do something extraordinary before I say yes? Let's think about this, because this moment was apropos in that there were no scriptures. Let's really let this sink in. It's not like Moses has the scripture before him, all of this set of instructions. We have the scriptures. And so God, every time we read the word and we see the commands of God, the mandates of God, he's making a request of us. But because we're not seeing Red Seas parting and burning bushes and sight to the blind and walking on water, if you will, many of us push back and feel justified because we have this concept of waiting for confirmation. What other confirmation other than the word do we need? Why do we need confirmation to be a vessel of honor? Why do we need confirmation to love our neighbor as we love ourselves? And Moses here, yes, I know he was asking for something. He was being asked to do something great. But again, how do we respond when God is speaking to us now? If Moses will push back in the midst of this phenomenon, if you will, we will certainly push back in situations that are less extravagant. If Moses will push back when the bush is burning, you will push back against a sermon you don't like. If Moses will push back when he is literally hearing a voice in the middle of the desert, you will push back when you are reading and you don't like what you read. But why? It's not the task that makes us push back. It's not the task always that is at the forefront of our hesitation, our rebellion. Moses, in our text, he's not ignoring the pain of the children of Israel. If you go back and read it, he says, their cry has come up before me. And so Moses never says, no, it didn't. Moses never says Pharaoh is a good guy. Moses never says this is not a problem. Literally, Moses, his entire history was proof of how bad things were in Egypt. He himself had to be saved by being placed in a small basket and put into the river. And so it's not that Moses was pushing back against the conditions that made his request necessary. Moses was aware, painfully aware, as many of us are, that he had some issues of his own. That's the pushback. He's not pushing back against how bad Pharaoh is. He's not pushing back against how much pain the children of Israel were in. He's not pushing back against the condition. He's not even pushing back against the need. He's pushing back based upon how painfully aware of his own condition he was. And for us, that's many of us. Let me expound. What Moses was being asked to do required Moses to ignore his own limitations. As we deal with self-defeating mindsets, for those of you who are listening to me right now, I want you to be, as you process, how do I respond to what God is asking me now? In order for us to move forward, many of us have to ignore our own awareness of the legitimacy of our limitations. We see it in Moses. What about this? What about that? Who's with me? What if they won't believe me? I can't speak. We're going to go through all of those. So he had to ignore the reality of his own limitations. Limitations that he's well aware of, like we are. You are well aware of your limitations. Many of you are well aware of the things that you don't do well. You are well aware of your own burdens. You are well aware of your own mistakes. I like to call them faults, failures, and fatigues. Moses had those. He's well aware of those. He had limitations that he had lived with for a long time. When you have lived with a particular set of limitations for a long time, they become normative. And so when you get this request from the Lord, the request is new, but your limit is old. Oh, yes. Your request is new. So God asks you to do something, and that's fresh. But you've been living with the reality of your own limitations for a long time. One of the limitations that Moses will say, and we haven't got there in the text yet, but one of his limitations is, I don't speak well. That was a fact. We know that Moses, by his own admission, had a speech impairment. I don't speak well. Now, we don't know whether or not he always had it, but he was well aware of it. It's a limitation that wasn't new. He didn't just develop a speech impairment while he was at the burning bush. And so many of us, God is speaking, telling you to do great things, telling you to go out and to be this vessel of honor, and you respond with factual, hear me, statements that you believe unequivocally are going to disqualify you from what God just said. Your statements do not discredit what God is asking. They discredit you. They discredit what you believe that you're capable of. They discredit what you believe that you're able to do based upon what you are painfully aware of, based upon what you've been living with, and based upon what you believe will disqualify you. Many of us have these same limitations, this same mindset, that Moses had. And we can look down our nose all we want. But the question that I want to come before us today is, how do you respond? Are you immediate? Are you Johnny on the spot? When God is like, do this, you're like, on it. Do this, on it. And the truth is, as long as we feel like we are capable, and I'm going somewhere with this. I need you to hear this. Notice how it's all based upon the skill sets that we believe that we have, as if God is along for the ride when he sends us instead of in control. Think about that again. We respond to God as if when God sends us, he's no longer involved. We respond to God as if when God sends us, it's all on us. We respond to God as if when God sends us, he is no longer an active participant in the work that he is sending us to do. So our pushback is based upon our own understanding and painful awareness of our limitations. What I'm trying to get through to us doesn't ignore the reality of our condition, but instead, I'm asking you to devalue this mindset that I can't, and increase the value of the mindset that he can. I'm asking us to change our perspective in how we see our own limitations. Let me say this, and I really want you to hear me, and if you take notes while we're going through these, write this down. We may be limited, but God is not. We may be limited, but God is not. This is absolute good news. Because what it says is, God, you mean to tell me that you're requesting something of me in spite of me? God, you know everything. You know the things that nobody else knows. I'm painfully aware of my own limitations, but you're aware as well. There's nothing hidden from your sight. And when you ask something of me, you're not asking something of me being in the dark about my limitations. You're asking something of me when you're aware of my limitations. It actually shows you how much God loves us and how much God is asking us to depend on him. How much God is asking us to just trust him. We are limited. God is not. I say it again. We are limited. God is not. In our passage, Moses is sitting there and he says, all right, who are you? He says, how am I going to go to them when I'm in this place? And God's response, I'm with you. Moses' response, well, who are you that's with me? God's response, I'm everything. I'm everything. When God asks something of us, even in the face of our own limitations, it should make us fall in love with God even more. It should make us understand more of his power. We should look at that and say, wow, God, even though you know everything, you still love me so much that you want to send me to do something great. We are limited. God is not. Change your perspective about God's request of you. And so I want you to think about this week. How am I responding to God's request of me? And if I'm responding simply by bringing before Him, here is who I am, and I'm not responding thankful for who He is, we've missed the perspective. Think on that as we continue to walk through this case study with Moses. May God bless you. May heaven smile upon you and give you peace. This is my prayer.